They were cast as white Americans, take account, and we're looking at an even sadder story. And so, on one level, it's weird that for all Shyamalan paid attention to the details of the show, those specific frames and shots and lines, he seemed to entirely miss that this was very much an Asian world, drawing from Asian cultures, their architecture, mythology, and social dynamics. Now, when questioned about this himself, he said, "Anime is based on ambiguous facial features. It's meant to be interpretive. It's meant to be inclusive of all races, and you can see yourself in all these characters."
But, has this guy actually watched anime? I mean, they're not exactly subtle when they're referring to Europe.
Avatar is not some nebulous cartoon where the people are inspired by, who knows what.
But what does all this have to do with making a good adaptation?
The Last Airbender came out as a relatively unique show amongst mainstream fantasy television, or even really books and films at the time, as an Asian-inspired fantasy story and world, especially for children. At the time Avatar was airing, we had Legend of the Seeker, Harry Potter, the Narnia series, Merlin, the Lord of the Rings films, all rooted in Western culture. And that's fine, but even though the characters were still casting magic fireballs at one another, Avatar's totally different foundations set it apart. The creators very explicitly envisioned its people as Asian, and the people who watched it and loved it, like me, definitely did too. Though it's never a one-to-one comparison, the Water Tribes are very clearly inspired by the Inuit, the Earth Kingdom by the Chinese, the Fire Nation by the Japanese, and the Air Nomads by the Tibetan monks. This unique aspect, this unique foundation, made it especially interesting, especially immersive. And if faithful adaptations are about capturing the heart of the series, then yeah, proper casting from their real-world counterparts is important to realizing that. I wanted to see the world that I had imagined as a kid brought to life faithfully, yeah, but a world includes its characters, and believe it or not, Sokka is not Jesse McCartney. But also, a story isn't just special because it tells a good story, as if stories exist in the ether and pop out of nothing. Stories exist in a socio-cultural context that make them more meaningful to people at certain times. Stories about hope resonate with us more during times of despair, not because they're necessarily better written, but because they fill a hole inside us that has been dug out by pain and loss. For Avatar, this was the first time a lot of Asian kids were seeing characters who looked like them, and had a culture like theirs on screen, and in a fantasy world too. That's precious, and it'll be part of what makes it special for a significant group of people. For me, this isn't just about accuracy to the original show, it's about understanding what made it originally special. Shyamalan didn't quite seem to get that. And if you're trying to make a faithful adaptation for the people who love it, but you don't look at the real-world context in which that art piece became meaningful to them, then you're going to miss just what the heart of the story is for many people.
And that's what happened here.
Book, who knows at this point?
My name is Ang. And I'm the Avatar.
Like everywhere except my home island of New Zealand, Aang's character arc is a dumpster fire.
I mean, to start, the one scene in which he even remotely acts like Aang with his mischievousness and that look, Shyamalan cuts from the film. Probably because a crew member in denim shorts walks on set, but still. In fact, Aang's arc is so poorly done that right at the end of the film, the dragon has to summarize it as easily as possible so that we don't miss the point of the ending.
You are not dealing with the loss of your people and your responsibility for their deaths.
Currently on the field. Never mind, wouldn't have done anything.
You're angry. You must let this go. As the Avatar, you are not meant to hurt others.
Again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but this had to be added in post-production because people weren't getting what Aang's character arc was. I mean, it's too obvious, it's too on the nose, too direct and succinct, even for this film. I figured it out. But he knows. He's watching me. It's too late though, Shyamalan, it's too late! I've already got the truth out there!
Now, Aang has, throughout the film, failed to waterbend because he blames himself for running away from his duties, resulting in his people's genocide. Or at least that is meant to be the story. It's a standard fantasy story trope that Shyamalan is clearly employing here. The hero needs to learn a lesson that is tied to a magical power, which they only learn at the end, allowing them to win the day with that power and change as a person at the same time.
But is this the lesson that Aang needs to learn? Well, kind of.
There is no crisis moment where Aang refuses to confront his feelings around the genocide, leading to their failure. The only time that he is ever affected by this loss outside of the Southern Air Temple is when he waterbends by himself a couple of times. Both moments which have no tension and thus no consequence for him not growing. Now, the main character's struggle is usually tied in some way to the darkest hour plot point, the moment where all seems lost, sometimes because they can't overcome a weakness. But Aang doesn't really seem to have one within the context of his arc. A beat where, say, he needs to waterbend to stop Zhao, but he can't because he refuses to deal with his grief. The film treats the death of the Moon Spirit as its darkest hour, but this has nothing to do with Aang's arc whatsoever, nor does his arc have anything to do with bringing the moon back.
And sure, he looks, sad, I say tentatively, when he waterbends the ocean later on. And I mean, the scene isn't terrible. Honestly, it looks pretty good. But the struggle just wasn't communicated across the story at all.
But there is something else communicated. Aang ran away because he was being emotional. He was afraid, nervous, not ready to take up the massive responsibility of being the Avatar. And him growing and taking up that responsibility is actually the thing that they reference in the prison scene with the Blue Spirit. Weirdly, for him to face up to his responsibilities, he needs to control his emotions, not feel them.
Fear is the mind killer. Sorry, I've been reading Dune.
The end result is that Aang seemingly has two arcs totally contradicting one another, neither of them being fully explored, and neither of them giving him a complete arc. And, I mean, he did let himself feel things at the Southern Air Temple. Rage is a feeling, and if the story is meant to be about healthily processing that loss, then what does this mean narratively? He's never even given an opportunity to refuse to process it. Shyamalan has an incoherent and contradictory arc for Aang either way you take it. He is telling us plenty of things, but he's not showing us any of them. And personally, I think the lack of scenes that drive Aang to make any meaningful decisions relevant to either of these arcs whatsoever is partly why this film feels so damn stilted with slower pacing than a French art film.
Nothing is ever driving him from one scene or crisis to the next, but this is best exemplified in a scene that never fails to make me laugh.
Aang needs to ask you something.
I have to talk to the Dragon Spirit. He can help me defeat the Fire Nation. Is there a spiritual place where I can meditate?
There is a very spiritual place. The city was built around this place. But we must hurry.
What is happening here? Well, Aang just decides to go talk to the Dragon Spirit. Gotta chill with his spirit pal, his spirit bud. But he does it for apparently no real reason. Oh, he says it can help them defeat the Fire Nation, sure, but what made him think that? What made him resort to this? What made him need to go right now? It doesn't come out of any crisis point of him not confronting his feelings, or not being ready to face up to the responsibilities of being the Avatar, or discovering that he can't defeat Zhao, or realizing that they cannot defeat the Fire Nation. In fact, earlier in the film, Paku says,
"The city was designed to withstand any assault. If we keep them to the courtyard and the marketplace till night falls, where we have the advantage, we will succeed."
Well, that's good. That's great. Solid plan, Stan. You know what? You don't even need me, so I'm just gonna crack open a cold one with the boys because, as you know, you can handle this on your own. Yeah, have a good one. Have a good one.
forgive me, but this situation does not seem particularly dire, and none of Yue, Aang, Paku, or Sokka at any point express that the situation requires more than what they currently have. This is not a hopeless situation narratively, because no characters feel hopeless, making this need to see the spirits feel kind of manufactured. In the show though, the very opposite is true. Aang goes out to fight the Fire Nation by himself, he manages to take down a single ship, and then he realizes that the entire navy is still out there. There is this giant moment of realization, a grim moment of hopelessness.
I must have taken out a dozen Fire Navy ships, but there's just too many of them. I can't fight them all.
But you have to. You're the Avatar.
I'm just one kid.
This situation drives Aang to find a solution, contacting the spirits. It's radical, it's risky, who knows, but hey, that's all we got. And the stupid thing is, this problem could have been solved in the film pretty damn easily. Remember that line with Paku? Just change it to, the full moon will make us stronger, but we cannot keep them out forever. We don't have the men. We have maybe a day before they breach the wall, 2 before the city falls. Even less. We need a plan. A miracle. Bam. Tension is higher because there's a time limit, and the situation seems dire, even hopeless, driving Aang to speak with the spirits.
And this is me letting slide that he changed how waterbending works. Oh, I didn't forget that. Nor did I forget this firebending nonsense. And this is just looking at what Shyamalan intended. Because when we actually look at the scenes that are meant to develop Aang's arc,
He has like one okay scene that is shot way too dark, but it was at least more subtle, showing us how he was feeling without taking an exposition dump on our faces. Ew, that's... ugh. And it does have consequences when he goes off to the Northern Air Temple, but the scene where Aang reveals himself in the prison is so unbearably weak.
If the Avatar had returned, would that mean anything to you?
The Avatar is dead. If he was here, he would protect us.
My name is Aang. And I'm the Avatar. I ran away, but I'm back now. It's time for you to stop doing this!
Please clap.
this is, at least on the page, meant to be a revelatory moment, a big decision for Aang. But there's no real tension or personal crisis that drives this story beat to happen.
Say a clear understanding narratively that him hiding his identity is causing harm to others, forcing him to choose and evolve as a character. Here, he sees people struggling, but his answer is, you gotta rise up, okay? Please, do it for me? No? Well, would it help if I was the Avatar? Fine, here I am. It does not have the meaning that Shyamalan intended it to carry, and this isn't even to point out that Shyamalan sacrificed Katara's arc in this moment to give it to Aang. In the show, she's the one who calls them to rise up with relentless hope. But no, he's giving that to Aang as well. And it sucks.
Oh, but he has the audacity to try and return this moment to Katara in the middle of the fight scene by having her yell in the background.
Don't be afraid!
I recognise that Shyamalan really needed to channel screen time into building up Aang's character, but if he wanted this to be about Aang struggling and then revealing himself to the world in a dramatic moment, have him be afraid to show his airbending for fear of people expecting too much of him that he cannot deliver, only for him to watch someone being punished for something that was not their fault. At which point it gets too much for him and he airbends to save them, revealing himself and his tattoos.
Not great, but better, which is basically the slogan for this entire video. So YouTube makes it clear that it loves videos which are topical, have a broad audience, and are full of exciting, even inflammatory language to really play into people's emotions. So I'm going to talk about scene structure, and in particular, active and reactive scenes. The most exciting, clickable topic ever. But before you leave your dislike, unsubscribe, and comment about how you're only here to talk about your childhood crush on Katara, you know how sometimes you might see a film or hear a piece of music and you really don't like it, but you can't quite pin down why?
Often because we don't have the theory or understanding to quite articulate it. Like, I don't know much about directing or cinematography, so when I saw this shot, I knew it was bad, but I couldn't put it into words. So, I asked my film-oriented peeps who do know how lighting and shooting works, and they said, and I quote, "It's just a mess. It has no opinion. You're not looking at anything, just a bunch of things with no clear order of importance and no drama to the composition. It's the beige pantsuit of shots." They talked about how there's no real distinction between the foreground and background. That
I just realized I drew more Charmies with my
doesn't really
Charmies.
lead our eyes anywhere interesting.
Hilarious.
There are also these strange angular central shapes with no real purpose.
And I reckon that a lot of you know that the scenes in this film don't really work, but you might not be able to be totally particular about why. But understanding active and reactive scenes really helped me, and you can try active and reactive scenes for just $9.99 a month at my link down the description, but I'm so sorry, I've been conditioned!
Scenes can be either active or reactive, sometimes both, but generally one or the other. An active scene explores a goal, a conflict, and then a resolution or disaster, while reactive scenes explore a character experiencing emotion, facing a dilemma, and then making a decision. Typically, reactive scenes follow active scenes as characters reflect on their successes and their failures in the conflict and disaster. But
After that
these
all
are more
important game 3 and
the point of
we
the scene
lose.
structure is more about helping us understand why certain story beats might be working and some others might not be. In The Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf, spoilers, dies. It's a dramatic active scene where they have a goal to get out of Moria alive, a conflict, a Balrog comes, and a disaster. They get out, but Gandalf dies in the process. It's an incredible scene, but it really matters that Jackson took the time to show us a reactive scene following it. They get out of Moria and we see
I should have
the
cited in
emotion.
more
The
cards.
Fellowship is torn, the hobbits
Then again,
are crying,
I
Frodo
didn't draw
is
anything
broken.
good regardless.
Then we get a dilemma. Aragorn says they need to press on, but Boromir demands that they give the hobbits just a minute to grieve. Then they make a decision. They press on to Lothlorien. The reactive scene matters here because it's
I do
what
like
makes
this
the disaster
build the best.
painful and meaningful. Gandalf's death wouldn't have hit us nearly as
I
hard
feel like
without
from here it really
lets
is
us
just
stew in the feels.
drawing
Disasters
the
are
out
made more
that makes me
impactful if
lose
we
now,
take the time to
rather
let
than
the characters feel
bad
and
a bad
reflect.
build of a
Conflict
deck
is made more meaningful when we
slash
show
skill
how it
issue.
forces characters
Well,
to
skill
change
issue's
course
definitely
and
still a thing,
reconsider
though.
their priorities. And the thing is, Shyamalan's film almost entirely lacks reactive scenes, where characters feel, face a dilemma, and make a decision.
And I mean, it'd be way too much work to go through the entire screenplay, mark out all of the active and reactive and non-scenes, and put it all into a graph so that I can show you how this damn film is strung together, right? So of course I did it.
The film's string